You want to support Roland Martin Unfiltered? Be sure to join our Bring the Funk fan club. Every dollar that you give to us supports our daily digital show. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real as Roland Martin Unfiltered. Support the Roland Martin Unfiltered daily digital show by going to RolandMartinUnfiltered.com. You can make this possible. Byron Cage, he is in the house. He has a new book. He's got a new album. It is called Isolation. That's the name of the album there. And in addition to that, he also has the book, I Do, The Marriage Between Ministry and Music. Byron Cage, welcome, man. What's going on?
First of all, let me say thank you. You look good in red. That red jet. Red is looking amazing on you.
You mean the Houston Rockets colors?
No. I'm talking about
no. You see that? You see that R?
I heard you talking to my other fraternity brother.
Do you see that R?
Yo.
Okay, do you see that R?
The right color.
That's for Rockets.
That's for the right.
And if you ever see me in red and white, I'm honoring Delta.
You all right with me?
Let's be clear. You see me in red and white, I'm honoring Delta.
You all right with me?
It ain't never got jack to do with Kappas. I don't deal with any organizations below my alpha pay grade.
Oh, listen at you. Listen at you.
Okay,
we bind that spirit right now.
You can bind it all you want to. You know Jesus was an alpha. Don't even front. And you got to remember, without alpha, y'all known as Kappa Psi.
No, not at all. We're still Kappa Psi.
You
see what this is right here. Come on.
Go ahead with the alpha in it. All right. Anyway, all right, y'all. Glad to have Byron on the show. Let's go to a break. See, we can shut that down real quick. So first, let's talk about the book, I Do, The Marriage Between Ministry and Music. What's that about?
Man, I chronicled my 30 years before I retired in 2018 in December after doing full-time ministry as a minister of music. And I talk about my years.
You retired from what?
From being a minister of music.
There you go.
I did that full time for 30 years. And it was a great time. Of course, I started in Grand Rapids at a church called Bethel. So I talk about the years there, me growing up with the DeBarge family and the things that I've learned and all that good stuff. Then we moved to Detroit. I talk about that. And me and Fred Hammond and a lot of us went to the same church there. And I was still directing choirs. But it wasn't until I got to Atlanta and I started working for Bishop Eddie Long. He was Reverend Eddie Long at the time in 1988, where New Birth only had like 400 or 500 members. And then when I left 10 years later, it was well over 20,000. And I just talk about the funny stories of Ebenezer and even in St. Paul and Richmond. And I just kind of tell pastors and music people how to get along together in the pulpit because they're always fighting. Every place I go, a lot of times, pastors think that musicians are crazy. Musicians think pastors are jealous of the music because, a lot of times music, because it's inspirational, will get a really just celebrated type of response. And sometimes if a pastor is intimidated by that response, feels like if the congregation was quiet when he was preaching, that maybe some way, somehow, it failed when that's not necessary. So I talk
that's about the dumbest thing.
It really is.
I don't understand the logic. I don't understand, and look, my wife is an ordained minister. I know many preachers. I don't understand preachers getting mad and being jealous of the music ministry. It's just the dumbest thing in the world to me.
It's there. Bishop Walter Scott Thomas in Baltimore set me free. We were on a flight going to the Bahamas to do TBN. And this is when I resigned from New Birth the second time. And he said, Byron, what's wrong? You seem to be a little bit distraught. And I told him, I just felt like it was time for me to go because I never want to be in the way. And I never want to feel like what I'm bringing to the table is not what you asked for. And because I served him for so many years, I just believed that was really what the church wanted. The church responded, and it was a great time. And unfortunately, it kind of pushed me out. And I told him, I just felt like I need to get out and let you get someone in here who really can give you what you want. So I left the second time. So Walter Scott Thomas said something to me, and I talk about it in the book. He said, Byron, if you have a leader who really only wants a celebration to happen at the point of revelation, which is the word, but not at the inspirational moment, which is the music, then you'll have some problems. So I'm brutally honest in this book because musicians aren't always right, but pastors aren't always right either. And I think that if we find that happy medium place of where we understand that a pastor has a vision for a church and how we can support that musically for the church, then I think that we can have a more harmonious relationship in the pulpit.
What people don't realize is when you hear the phrase, you don't want to see how the sausage is made. There are folk who look at church from the pews, and it's a whole different world behind the pulpit. When you look at shows like Greenleaf, and people might say, oh, it's television. No, it ain't.
Oh, no, that's real, right? Yeah, and church is a business as well. People, you can say what you want to say, hallelujah, glory to God. We got to have the money to make sure that church happens. We got to be able to bring the tithes into the storehouse, the Bible says, that there may be meat, food for those who serve the way that they do. And I think that when people are obedient in their giving, then it becomes an act of worship, that this is something that they love to do, because the Bible says this is a commandment that we should do.
So when you reflect on those 30 years, what was the craziest thing? The craziest thing that happened?
This is a New Birth story, and this is a true story. I had just gotten to New Birth maybe 3 or 4 months, and Bishop Long said to me, this is when New Birth was at 2778 Snapfinger Road in Decatur, Georgia. And he said, Byron, I want you to give me a fiery number before I preach. And I said, okay, you're talking to the Pentecostal Assemblies of the World guy who knows how to direct choirs. I'm the choir master, so I stood the choir up and I said, y'all ready? And in the 1980s, remember, you had the Thompson Community Choir, you had Donaldville Choir, you had so many big directors. So I did this song called There Is No Way I Could Live Without You. And when we got to the end of the part, of course, in the 80s, you had to slow the music down. So I slowed the last time. I have tried over, and I started directing, so boom, with all my antics, my Ricky Dillon directing, and over, and over, and over, and I just ran down the aisle like this, and the church went bananas. I mean, everybody lost it, and so Bishop Long, Reverend Long at the time, he had to start on 10,000 just to even get anybody to listen to him. Mm-hmm. The people were shouting so bad, so after the second service, he says to me as he's walking out, because I'm quivering on the piano he says to me, I'm going to see you in my office before the third service. So I'm thinking he's going to give me a raise. I'm thinking he's going to praise me. He's going to look at me and just anoint my head with oil. My cup is going to run over. I knock on his door. He says, come here. He said, come in. So he had his head down. He saw it was me. He said, if you ever do that again, I'll fire you. Mm. And I said,
I did what you asked me to do.
I did exactly what you asked me to do. So, of course, the anointing lifted off of me at that moment, and then he had some choice words to say in Baptist words, and I went back before the third service, I wrote my resignation out, and I gave it to him. Right before, but that particular service, that third service, I still had to conduct the music. It was like a Presbyterian funeral in there. It was dead. There was no spirit. I had no light. I don't want to be bothered with it. So I sat there and after the third service, he said, I'm going to see you in my office again. Now I'm like this. Come on. I'm ready. I'm like, come on, Doc.
You have the letter in your pocket, right?
Bro, let me tell you, I'm from Detroit, partner.
No, you had written the resignation letter. You already handed it to him. So you handed him before the second service.
Before the third service.
Before the third service.
And he read it and just put it in his Bible. So when he said he wanted to see me again, I was like, man, where's my switchblade? Let me find something, So I knocked on the door. He said, come in again. He said, listen, sit down. He said, I owe you an apology because you gave me what you thought I wanted. He said, because you're Pentecostal and I'm Baptist. He said, I thought you understood. I didn't clearly articulate, but I never want the moment like that before I have to preach. He said, I want it to be reverent. I want people to be ready to receive the word. I said, oh, okay, I got it, And so through the rest of those years that I served there, even if I did have a bump in the road, I knew how to make an adjustment to make it right. So that way, because he was not a singer, he tried one time to sing, we are climbing Jacob's ladder. Do you want to hear? Here it goes. We are climbing Jacob. And it was like almost a shout. And people were literally screaming, laughing, because they didn't know if it was for real. It was funny. It was really hilarious. He never sang again after that. You know what I'm saying? But it was. I had so many wonderful stories of being, a minister of music in the 30 years that I did it. And I just wanted to step back now that I'm moving closer to 60. I said it's time for me to let some other young people come up and put a perspective on there. The young people are so talented. I just don't want them to lose what we do as a people in gospel music. But I really, man, I had a wonderful, wonderful experience for 30 years.
I'm gonna come back to that. How did you deal with the explosive allegations that hit New Birth? Working there, knowing people there, and people leaving in droves.
Yeah, it was.
And membership went down to less than 1,000. And it was interesting because when it happened, I wrote a very critical article on CNN.com, was on the air, and his folks were upset and mad at me because I had previously done some stories on him for Savoy Magazine and some other ones. And I said, let me be clear. I said, I speak truth regardless.
Right. Well, you know what? I had been gone, I think, at the second time, maybe 3 or 4 years when that came out. And I was so just distraught over the fact that people can just be so, I think, vicious unless you had all of the truth. And because I didn't know who those individuals were other than maybe seeing them work out in the gym or something. And Bishop never came at me in a way that would have ever made me feel like that, because I was the minister of music for the church, and I was doing all the creative concepts for videos, wrote the songs, his jingles for his preaching thing that he was doing. And I was just saddened. I was saddened that if it were true, that he still has to stand before a just God. I even look at Jamal Bryant, who's my frat brother as well, and he has some harsh things to say, and he's the pastor of the church today, because I think people have the right to be able to speak what they want to speak, but then there's something called the truth as well. And one thing I don't think that we all knew, or we will all ever know, what the entire truth was based on those who were accusing him, and then the things that he said, out of his mouth, like, I ain't cast the first stone yet. I feel like David against Goliath. And some of those statements, I think, were some of the downfalls where people started turning. And but I'm just.
Oh yeah. I mean, I see it. I said, look, you hit me with those allegations.
Yeah.
Ain't gonna be no private mediation.
Yeah.
Everything we live streaming
Yeah.
My whole deal is, because at the end of the day, I think back to Max Robinson. He was dying. 1988, he speaks at Howard University, and he says, never ever lose your integrity or your credibility, because in the end, it's all you got.
Yeah, but I think unfortunately, though, especially with social media and the way they can do it, there was an individual who did a story about me. My manager called me and got my label involved because someone said that I had been in a relationship and I gave Bishop Long AIDS. And I said, what? What are you talking about? So I read the story. We got involved.
Somebody wrote that?
Somebody wrote that.
Yeah, see right there?
And see, those kind of things like that. And because I'm from Detroit, you know what I'm saying? It's one of those things that you say, if I
might not have a church moment right there, I'm just saying.
Man, but you know what? My mother said this to me. She said, you never have to worry about God believing a lie. Live your truth. And in the 30 years that I've been minister of music, I've never been fired for anything. I've never been called on the table for anything. My time has been very honorable. As a gospel artist, this is my 10th CD, and I've been in it for 25 years with a blameless, spotless record, with the exception of my divorce, But other than that, I look at people who have the ability to remain anonymous but talk about public people in such a vicious way, and in a lot of instances where it's not even true. You know what I'm saying? Someone said, Roland, that you really didn't want to be an alpha. You wanted to be a kappa, but...
We know that's a lie. We know that's a lie. I mean, that was absolutely no consideration given to any junior level organization. None.
Whatever.
Like none.
Whatever, but
none whatsoever.
Yeah, but what I really am glad about what Jamal is doing now at New Birth, man, they are growing again by leaps and bounds, because he is, not just a Kappa, but he also is a man who understands community, and he has a love for whatever happened in Baltimore, where he felt the leading to have to go. Man, he made the right decision to go to Atlanta, because New Birth right now, man, and I was there for 12 years. I was there when it was the glory years, before the big fall from grace. But I'm grateful to see what God is doing there again for them.
All right, questions? Rob, Jason, Reese, Michael, anybody?
Yeah, I just have I find it interesting. I had Robert Greene, who wrote the 48 Laws of Power on my show. And I think we have this illusion, a lot of us do, that, okay, in places like church, politics doesn't happen, egos don't happen, because we're all supposed to be following Christ, when ultimately it's more political than most environments. What did you learn from that? Like, what did your first encounter with Bishop Long? I took it as like he basically, there was a few things. One, you were on different pages, but I also saw something else. Is like he, the first rule in the 48 Laws of Power is never outshine the master. And it seemed like in that encounter, when you came up there and you gave your performance, you were outshining him. And I think that was, whether he admitted it or not, that was also part of the problem. What did you learn from that you still take forward, in that people say that they're have these ideals, but often human nature and politics still gets in the way?
Yeah, I had to learn quickly that men, our flesh, they are not spirit, from the standpoint where they don't have a glorified body. And so they're subject to make mistakes. And I think because when I came to New Birth, I was 23, 24, Bishop Long was 33, 34. And, you know, this is when he still wore white dress shoes with a black suit. And I mean, it was just because he's from the country. And so,
yeah, that's country.
That's country. I'm from Detroit. And so, you know, I kind of look at, he came Baptist, I came up PAW. So with me, you know, listening to what it was that he was trying to get, I would have to be very sensitive to know that if there is a place where he would be uncomfortable before the word, it was my job as minister of music to be able to set the house where he would be comfortable because he was not a singer. I could sing some of those songs, and if Bishop Morton was the pastor, he can get right up behind there and take it. You know what I'm saying? But Bishop Long wasn't like that. So I learned how to be very sensitive and to listen and to be able to make him as comfortable as possible, especially before the word and then also after the word, the selection that we sang so that it would be appropriate with what was being ministered.
Don Triplett says on Facebook, y'all got to hear Jamal talk about being hazed by Byron.
Now see, that's one of the 10 commandments.
See, y'all don't think I don't read y'all comments during the show.
Thou shalt not lie. I never laid a hand. I did write Jamal Bryant's letter of recommendation, but I did not touch Jamal Bryant. Touch not my anointed and don't do it. And Cap Alpha side, we don't haze. We just very physically exert. We exert a lot of physical energy and have a great time. Amen.
Yeah, and y'all, and y'all drop canes. All right, who else got a question? Jason?
I have a quick question. There's been a lot of talk of, you know, throughout the last, I guess, decade or so, about the mix between secular music and gospel music. And some people have said that gospel music is losing a little bit of the religion in it, and it's just becoming too secular, of course, with people like Kirk Franklin and other people. So I wanted to know what your position is and how you feel about some of the newer gospel artists who may not even mention Christ in a song, but they still consider themselves part of the gospel genre. Do you think that it's getting too secular?
Not necessarily, because really, I cannot talk about the intentions of anybody's heart. Like when I look at Kanye West, and we know all of the stuff that he was when he was, you know, doing hip hop.
Speaking of mental illness.
Yeah, right, and singing to some of the things that he used to say and do. And now to have this choir with all these young people actually singing very traditional gospel music that's from the 80s and 90s. I get excited about that. I mean, people criticize me when I did the thing with Chance the Rapper on Jimmy Fallon's show. And they were like, well, why would you do that? Because I got a chance to sit down with him. And a lot of these kids came straight up out of church. And they're saved and they love the Lord. Maybe they have made some mistakes in the past, but my thing is not to judge. My thing is to love and hopefully to provide the kind of light for them that if they need counseling, if they need somebody to talk to about situations, that they can relate to me because I can relate to them. Paul said it like this in Corinthians. He said, I became all things to all people so I can win them. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to win souls. There are some people that I think are if your motive is just to be famous, then hey, go have at it. But if your motive really is to reach people and to really bring the love of Christ to them in the way that you do it, whether it's trap music and that's not even me. I don't get that music, but you know what? There's some young people that you relate to that. Me and Ty Tribbett did a show, and I did the little shoop, and everybody went crazy because they were like, what is he doing? And I laugh at it now, but yeah, just to answer your question though, ma'am, it's just the intention of your heart. What is in your heart, you know, when you do it? And that's what means everything to me.
Reese?
Yeah, just some practical questions. How do you listen to your music on streaming platforms, and what's your social media information?
I wish, to be honest with you, I wish there was no streaming. I wish we can go back to selling records. Let me tell you what the young kids do today. The young kids will never know success as actual recording artists through record sales. Because, you know, the presence of the Lord is here, of course, sold so many records, so did I'll Bless the Lord. But as we got to my recording called Faithful to Believe, that started to be a whole nother situation where, you know, because of streaming and because of now you have iTunes, now you do have YouTube where you can listen to things. It just made it a little more difficult.
Right.
And it's really creating a generation of young people that feel like they're entitled to free stuff. I mean, because that's literally almost what it is. When you consider that CDs used to cost like $16.99, $15.99, and it kept going down. Now it's like $9.99, but most people just don't, you know, take the time to really invest in what they're. So now working on a new book, and the new book just really handles not just the whole millennial, but the generation behind them. What's going to be left musically 20 years from now? Because the Lord has blessed me to have, this is my 10th CD, and I have a publishing catalog of amazing songs that are very popular in church, and I'm grateful to God for that. But I just hope we don't lose what it is that we have created through the years of the people's shoulders to stand on, like the Walter Hawkins, the James Cleveland, Mattie Moss Clark, Thomas Dorsey, the father of gospel music, the Barrett sisters, Clara Ward and the Ward singers used to sing in nightclubs. They were doing that back in the 50s.
Right.
And they were criticized for it. So.
But people also don't understand and frankly don't care about the economics of it as well. Prince was one of the people who was absolutely against streaming for the longest. It wasn't until the final year or so, the last couple of years of his life, where he allowed his music to be streamed. People forget he actually had his own download service that predated iTunes. And so you have somebody who has 600 million streams.
Right.
When you look at what they get paid, they're like,
That's exactly right.
like, what is that? And so for the person out there who's, in fact, interesting, when Prince was alive, he tweeted something, and my response was, oh no, I actually buy my music. And he responded, I'm not paying attention. And Kelly Carter hits me up. She's like, Roland, do you realize that Prince responded to your tweet? She's like, that was actually him. And I was kind of like, oh, really? Oh, okay. I mean, because I wasn't even paying attention to it. But that's what people don't understand, that you got some artists who put, I've interviewed Maxwell. It was like 8 years between one album and the next.
It was 7. It was 7 for mine. Yeah.
And that's, and you got to live and eat during those 7 years.
Absolutely.
And so a lot of people don't understand that. But also, I think not understanding how albums are conceived and conceptualized. And I've done so many interviews with artists, where what often happens is when they have the CD, I'll have them walk through, okay, what is this song? What is this song? Where did this come from? What is this? So there's a story, because an album, a music album, is also like a book. There's a story from beginning to end.
Absolutely.
So if you only hear one story, that's essentially like reading a chapter out of a book.
It is.
And then it's kind of like, all right, then I'm gone with it.
Yeah, and what I do, I compare it to Walter Hawkins' Love Alive 1, the first album. Had streaming come out back then, and Going Up Yonder was such a popular song, but on that same record was a song called Change, which is even almost bigger than that.
Yep.
So you don't really understand an artist fully and completely when you just buy one song.
Oh, Benny and the Jets was on the B-side of Elton John. The record label thought, I know what the other song was going to be hit. Yeah. And what happened was Black Radio picked up Benny and the Jets, and that's exactly how that song took off. And it blew past whatever was on the A side.
Right, absolutely.
Can I actually talk about the other side of that, too? I agree with you in terms of the challenging parts of it. I will say, though, that there's also an opportunity to make your own brand and not have to go through the same things you had to go through before. That's one. Two, I do think now people are starting to get to the point where they will pay for content, but you have to build that up over time.
Oh, yeah.
And so I do think there's opportunities with streaming. So I would tell people, as an artist, never go away. You have to embrace it, but figure out a way to own some of your data too, because there's a Black entrepreneur, I think it's Angela Benton, that's her name. So she's actually creating a platform for people to have and keep and make money off of their content too. So I think you're going to see people in the next 5 to 10 years want to actually pay for several reasons. I mean, it won't be a lot, but if you own it, you get more.
Right, they're paying now. Because there was a period there where they were Napster, they were just LimeWire, they were ripping everything off.
They were.
And it happened there.
Yeah.
Michael, question.
I don't want to get involved in your black-on-black crime, but as a proud Q.
Well, as an Omega, y'all know about crime. Y'all know about crime. But more prison chapters than any other fraternity.
There you go. I'm just saying. He just should have
you should
have asked your question. You should have minded your business and asked your question.
I knew it was going to get personal. All I'm going to tell you is keep up the good work.
Thank you,
Proud
sir.
of you and congratulations.
I appreciate it. And I'm just grateful, man, to be relevant even after all these years, because I put out 2 singles during the 7 years where I didn't have a full project. One was called Like No Other, and another one was called Good to Me. And I just looked at the success of one's song, of how many times it was streamed, and people that bought it on TuneCore as a single. And I was able to put all of that money back in my pocket because I wasn't with a record label at that time.
Right.
Yeah. But when I was with Vicky Latte out of Gospel Centric, which also had Kirk Franklin and Kirk Carr and so many of the other wonderful artists, we were selling millions of dollars worth of product now. So now I'm thankful that I still work today because I have a whole catalog of popular songs to where people still want to hear Presence of the Lord is here. They still want to hear I'll Bless the Lord. They still want to hear Broken But I'm Here. They still want to go. And I'm just grateful to be able to still be working. I'm real happy about this new project, though, because I didn't want to do another record at first. But I decided, I said, you know what? I'm going to do something and put out some music that'll be relevant, but also that will show people, this is what Roland was talking about earlier, where I have been for the last 7 years. One song in particular, because we've been talking about mental illness that God gave me, is a song I wrote called Isolation. And it's about being by yourself and being depressed and having anxiety. And I was listening to a lot of my gospel giants like Richard Smallwood, and people say that they battle with depression, and some people say, you know, they feel like killing themselves. You know? So God gave me a song called Isolation, and I titled it that. I could have titled it, It's Raising Up, one of the up-tempo songs, but I just think that we as church people especially need to know it's okay. Let's praise God. My brother was saying it earlier. Let's read the Bible. Let's fast. Let's shout. But when we get up, let's go see a mental health specialist person that you can speak to. Because I get so many pastors call me and say, Byron, that song, Isolation, man, when you get to the part that I said, he's preparing me for what I need and he's protecting me from what I can't see. It was 3 o'clock in the morning with tears falling down my face. I was like, God, sometimes I just feel this sense of being here alone and nobody understands. And it feels like the walls are closing in on you. And I know a lot of people understand that. So that's what the song Isolation came from.
Well, I wish you had sought somebody out before you pledged. Then they would have probably dealt with that mental illness.
I was just fine.
They would have dealt with that mental illness.
I got just what I wanted. Got just what I wanted.
Hey, like I said, Coach ain't bad, but it ain't first class. All right, y'all. The book is called I Do: The Marriage Between Ministry and Music. That's the book. Check it out. And then, of course, show the album cover. It's right. I still call them albums. That's what they are. Album is called Isolation. Who you looking at?
Hey, come on now.
Who you looking at?
I'm looking at Jesus. And you see
okay,
the
all
isolation around me.
But you're looking at everybody else on the single.
Now look at the heavens are open.
Yeah, okay.
That the heavens
all
are
right.
open.
Put on some jeans that ain't torn. All right, y'all. Again, the book is called I Do: The Marriage Between Ministry and Music, and the CD is called Isolation. Byron Cage, we appreciate it. Thanks a bunch.
Thank you, sir, for having me.
All right, 06. All right, y'all, don't forget to support. Look, that's 5 years late. That's, whatever. We were finished with college.
You're first to market, we're best
the pride of all our hearts, true manliness.
You sound like Eddie Long.
Thou ever dost impart.
You sound like Eddie Long right now. Yeah.
Lord
see?
Keep my mouth.
Yeah, I paid attention.
A fool's lips enters him into contention, and his mouth invites a beating. Say one more word, bro.
You sound like Eddie Long. Okay, all right. So I read the Facebook comment, Periscope. Y'all ain't saying nothing interesting, so that's why I'm not gonna give y'all a shout out. But let's see, Angel L, Byron Cage. Please hit a little of Just to Know Him, please. All right, so we're in the show this way. So, Angel, this for you. Go ahead.
Just to know Him, Jesus Christ, Son of the living God. Just to know Him, just to know Him, Jesus Christ, Son of the living God.
All right. There you go, Angel. There you go. All right, folks. You want to check out Roland Martin Unfiltered? YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And subscribe to our YouTube channel. There's only one daily digital show out here that keeps it black and keep it real. It's Roland Martin Unfiltered. See that name right there? Roland Martin Unfiltered. Like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. That's YouTube.com/Roland S. Martin. And don't forget to turn on your notifications so when we go live, you'll know it.